Hey and welcome to day number 11, and in this video I'm gonna show you how to build the tank tracks for the Saurer RK7. I have already placed them in our main assembly, and when I switch over to the actual track assembly you can see that it consists of many different parts. So if I scroll down at the very end of the browser list, then we have 140 parts here, but the scene still runs smooth. And this is of course only possible because I'm using components and instances. And in case you want to know more about assemblies, components and bodies, I'm gonna link another video in the right hand upper corner. Actually, it's a video series consisting of 2 parts, and I promise if you watch both, you will know a lot more about components and assemblies in Fusion 360 than many other people do. Now let's move the history marker over to the left just a tad, so that we can take a look at the single component part. Actually, I can move the history marker over to the left a little bit more because this one was mirrored. And that's the part I was working on today. And to be honest, it was quite difficult to build because I had to figure out how the tracks work in the first place. And for this reason, let's take a very brief look at some reference images to get a better understanding. Let's start with a brief overview first. I have taken some blueprints of the RK7 miniature model. All of the copyrights belong to HobbyBoss, of course, and at the top we have a pre-assembled version of the miniature model created by Kentaro Takabayashi. I've linked his website in the description below. It's kenny22.com. Now the tracks of course go all the way around. We have a track on each side of the vehicle, and at the very front there is the front drive sprocket. So that's the wheel that drives the tracks. And at the rear we have another wheel which is called the idler wheel, and this one does not drive the tracks, but it keeps everything in place. At the bottom we have 6 boogie suspension wheels, and they allow the vehicle to overcome terrain obstacles by their up and down movement. And at the top we have some return rollers, and these also keep the track links in place. Next, let's take a look at some actual images, and on the left I have tried to mark a single track link, so it's the green one here. So forget about the light green over here because it's just its mirrored counterpart. And the whole thing is a lot less complex than you might think when you first look at these pictures, because all you need is one single track link to build up the entire track chain, and it's this one here. And they are made in a way that the following link fits into it. So this means they are a little bit narrower at the front and a little bit wider at the back, with a gap or an opening where the front part of the follow-up link fits into, and everything is held in place by a bolt that goes all the way through. Now behind the tracks you can see the front drive sprocket and how its teeth stick out of the little gap between the track links, and this is necessary to make the movement of the entire track possible in the first place. When we move on to the image in the center, you can see the return rollers at the top and some boogie suspension wheels at the bottom, and here you can also see these triangular extensions that build some sort of a run mark, and this run mark is necessary to keep everything in place. So at the image on the right we have another return roller at the top and another boogie suspension wheel at the bottom, and these wheels run along this run mark that keeps everything in place. Now that's it for the short overview, and let's move on with creating an actual track link. Next, let me show you how to build such a part. I'm not gonna show you the entire process because this will probably take a little bit too long, but I'm gonna build a simplified version so that you can create these tracks in Fusion 360 on your end. And for this reason, let's start a new document first. And here I select the top plane and start a new sketch. Then I draw a line that serves as a reference line again, and I hit X to turn it into a construction line and add some dimensions with the D key. And I add 24 centimeters, and this is because I know that the tracks have a total width of 24 centimeters according to my reference material. And then let's add some constraints. And now I should be able to move the line up and down, but not to the left or to the right anymore. And then I finish the sketch, and as you can see, I've created this one in the top level assembly. But from now on, I'm gonna create the part in a new component, and I call this one our track part. And then before I do anything else, I go to construct and offset this plane by 12 centimeters. And then I right click on the plane and start a new sketch. Then let's continue with a circle right at the origin, add some dimensions like 2.2, and then I draw a couple of straight lines. Make sure that top and the bottom line are both horizontal, and then I add another dimension from the center of the circle to the line on the right. And last but not least, I activate the trim command by hitting the T key on the keyboard to get rid of this inner part of the circle, and then I exit the sketch. Now, when I press the Q key, I open up the extrude menu. For the start, I choose offset plane and minus 1.2 centimeters, and for the distance, let's try minus 1.6 centimeters, so that we end up with something like this. And let me also show the sketch and the plane. I right click on the plane, create a new sketch. This time I select the one from before, hit the P key to project the lines, and then offset all of these line segments by hitting the O key on the keyboard to bring up the offset command. Let's try here something like 0.2. Click on OK, finish the sketch. And now I go to the Create drop-down menu, choose Loft, select the sketch that I've just created. So it's this one here, and the surface of our body. Looking good. And then I can also confirm the Loft command. Let's use the same sketch one more time to create the second part, and for this reason I show the origin first. Then I start a new sketch on this plane, select the profile of our initial sketch, project it to the plane, hit the Q key again to open up the extrude command, and then I extrude it by 2.8 centimeters. And if you press I on the keyboard, you open up the measurement tool, and then you can measure the distance between this point and this point here, for instance. And here you can see that the dimension or the distance between these 2 points, so these two faces, is also 2.8 centimeters. Then let's quickly start another sketch on top of these parts. So I select this plane, right click, create sketch, and before I draw any lines, I select these lines here, hit the P key to bring up the project command, click on OK, and then I draw a rectangle like so. So this way it snaps to the projected lines, and all that's left to do now is to add some dimensions. 1.4 and 1.4 on the right, and then the sketch is fully defined. Then let's extrude these lines. 0.5 should be enough. Make sure that the operation is set to join, so that we end up with one body. And then I'm gonna hide this one and show the sketch again, and use the two rectangles on the sides to make another extrusion, this time from object. Then I select the top plane, and let's try something like 0.3 and a negative taper angle of something like -20, and then I can confirm this. Then let's quickly create another sketch, this time on the bottom plane here. So I right click on it, select create sketch, draw a rectangle like so. And then you do not have to project the lines from the geometry to the sketch plane manually. You can simply add a constraint, for instance. So I choose the collinear constraint first, then I select this line over here, and it automatically projects the line to my sketch plane. So let's do this for the other side too. And for this line down here too. And all that's left to do now is to add some dimensions. I go for something low like 3 millimeters. I exit the sketch by hitting the Q key, and then I extrude this one. And when I start extruding and leave it somewhere like here and then shift click on this face over here, it extrudes exactly to the face, and of course everything is nice and combined, so we do not have any surface lines in between these elements. So that's always a neat trick. So let me show you this one more time. So if you start the extrusion and then shift click on a face, it gets extended exactly to this face. Then I confirm this and also hide our first sketch. Next, let's continue with the front part, and for this reason I start a new sketch, and we need a circle again. And let's add some dimensions. This one is a little bit smaller, 1.8 should be fine. And I'm gonna make it horizontal with the origin. And then let me also add a distance between the center of the circle and the origin, something like 7 centimeters, and then I finish the sketch. And before I extrude this one, I bring up the measurement tool again and measure the distance between this face, and this is 6.4 centimeters. So I'm gonna extrude the circle by hitting the Q key, and I do not start on the profile plane, but I offset the plane, and here we need 6 centimeters with a distance of 3 centimeters because I built only half of the front part, and when I'm done I will mirror it to the other side. Now before I connect both parts, let me create another sketch on the top plane, a line that goes straight through the cylinder, and then let's add a dimension, something like 0.5 should be already enough. Then I exit the sketch, and in the next step I'm going to use this line to split the face. So I'll go to modify, split face, select the face of the cylinder as my face to split and the straight line as my splitting tool, like so. And then I can simply push and pull this face outwards just a tad. Let's try 1.2 or maybe a 0.1 and confirm this. Then let's start a new sketch on this plane. I continue with a rectangle and use the constraint tools to make these edges collinear, top one and the bottom one. All that's left to do to turn this one into a fully defined sketch is to add some dimensions. Then I finish the sketch, go to construct, offset plane, select this plane, switch to the right view and move it over close to the cylinder. Then we can visually extend it over. Right click on the plane, create a new sketch, and this time I enable slice so that we can see through. I select the cylinder, hit the P key to project the lines and draw 2 straight lines, one at the top, one at the bottom. Add some dimensions between the lines and the points. 0.2. Then I exit the sketch, go to create, loft, select both profiles, this one and this one. And for the connection type, I choose direction, and this introduces these handles, and they allow me to add some curvature to the bridge between the profiles so that the connection is not that straight anymore. And then I'm gonna leave it like this and confirm the loft command. Then we can simply select the front face, hit the E key on the keyboard to bring up the extrude command and extrude it into the cylinder. Make sure that the operation is set to join. Confirm this, and then I have turned both bodies into one body. Now let's also add some curvature to this bridge here, and for this reason I switch to the right view, enter the sketch mode again, and this time I project these lines to the sketch plane. Let me get rid of this one, and then I introduce a 3-point arc at the top and another one at the bottom, and then I make the arc and this line tangent. Do the same for the bottom part. Exit the sketch, and then let's switch over to the surface tab, and here I search for the extrude tool, and then I select both lines, the top and the bottom one, and extrude them. So let's change the direction from one side to two sides. Then I confirm this, and all that's left to do now is to go back to the solid tab, modify, replace face, select this one as our source face and this surface as our target face. Then I'm gonna do the same for the bottom part too. Go to modify again, replace face, this is our source face and that's our target face. And then I hide the surface body, and when I take a look at the model from the right again, you can see that now we have some nice curvature, not only from the top but also from the side view. And now we can go ahead and mirror the front parts. I'm gonna bring up the mirror command, make sure that the type is set to faces. I'm gonna select all of these faces, make this one my mirror plane, click on OK, and start a new sketch on this face, another rectangle again. So let's add some dimensions here. This should be something like 1.4. Then I'm gonna use the collinear tool and make these lines collinear. And then let's add another dimension at the top to center the rectangle. And then I exit the sketch by hitting the Q key, extrude it, something like this, maybe 2 centimeters. Select this face, bring up the extrude command again by hitting the E key, and instead of distance I select to object, and then I click on this face here so that the box gets joined with the bridge. And last but not least, I repeat the same with another rectangle. Again, some dimensions from top to bottom. Let's make this 1, and I move it in place. Make it collinear again over here. Then let's also, it's not necessary to define the width, we keep it as it is, but I add another dimension from the top plane to this point. Should be 0.2 to center it. I exit the sketch one more time, extrude the profile, and bring up the extrude command one more time. And here I also change the distance to object, select this face and confirm the operation. Now let's also build the extension at the bottom that makes up the run mark, and for this reason I start a new sketch in this plane, and let's project the entire face like so. Then I'm gonna exit the sketch and extrude this one down quite a bit. And I'm gonna add this not as a new body, but I select the operation to join. Then I select the top face and the bottom face of our main part, go to create again, loft, and confirm the loft like so. This way we create a bridge between these two parts. And then let's probably make this a little bit longer and start a new sketch on the right plane. So I'm gonna do this real quick, draw a straight line, an arc, and another straight line. And let's make sure that these two lines are tangent to. And I'm gonna reposition the sketch like so. Then I'm exit the sketch and go to modify, split body. This is my body to split. The sketch line is my splitting tool. I make sure that extend splitting tools is disabled. Then I click on OK, and we can simply select this body, right click on it and remove it. Of course, you could spend a lot more time creating this extension, but for demonstration purpose, I'm gonna keep it like we have it now. And last but not least, I'm gonna select the plane from the very beginning, right click on it, create a new sketch, and let's perforate the front and the back part. Create a circle first, add some dimensions, and let's do the same for the front part. I'm gonna place the circle not in the center yet, but add some dimensions first, and then I select it and make it concentric with this one, so it sits perfectly in the center. I exit the sketch again, hit the Q key, select both profiles, and then I perforate both parts. And to finish this up, let's mirror the entire body and combine both parts. All that's left to do now is to add a bolt that goes all the way through. So I'm gonna scroll back to the stage before the mirror. Then I select this plane one more time, right click and create a new sketch. And here I start with a circle one more time, add some dimensions, something like 1.4. And then I'm gonna exit the sketch and extrude this one, and I choose offset from plane, and here let's enter a low value like 0.1, and here something like 0.2 to add a cap on our bolt. And then I start a new sketch on the same plane one more time, and I exit the sketch and extrude the profile all the way through. And now we have a new body created as our bolt, and this one has to start not on the plane, but I'm gonna offset it a little bit, 0.1, set the operation to join, so that we end up with two bodies, our track part and the bolt. I'm gonna also make the first circle smaller a little bit. Let's try 1.2. And then I'm gonna mirror everything over by selecting the bolt and the center plane, so that we end up with something like this. Now, before I copy the component along a path, let's see if everything fits together. And for this reason, I select the entire track part, go to copy, switch to the top level assembly, Control V on the keyboard to bring up the move and copy command. Then I switch to the right view and move this guy over to the left, -7 centimeters. And everything looks very good. Then let's delete this copy and create another sketch in the top level assembly. So I select the right plane for this and start with a straight line, followed by an arc, another straight line, and then I'm closing this profile off with another arc like so. Make sure that all parts are tangent. And then let's also add a coincident constraint between this line and the origin, like so. And then I exit the sketch. And now it's finally time to go to create pattern on path, set the type to components, select the entire component, select the sketch as our path and the orientation to path direction. Then I move this arrow over. As you can see, the quantity is currently set to 3, so let's set it a little bit higher to something like 30. And then I can simply drag the arrow along the path until I meet the first component part. Then I switch to the right view, zoom in a little bit, and try to position it like so. And then let's see how many parts we need to close this off. I'm gonna set the value to 40. Still too low. Let's try something like 58. And this looks already quite good. Maybe still not enough. Let's try 60. Seems to be okay. Let's try 64. Oh, that was already too much. 62. Then I'll confirm the command. Go to inspect, section analysis, and let's see if the bolts are lining up. Gonna switch to the right view one more time. And as you can see, it's not perfectly centered, so I double click on the pattern command. And let's try something like 61 or 63. And this looks a lot better. So I'm gonna confirm it. Get rid of the section analysis. Hide the sketches. And this is basically it. Looks very cool. Now that's it for this video. Thank you very much for tuning in. Subscribe, and in case you have any questions, leave a comment in the comment section below, and see you in the next one.